Sometimes the biggest test of your life looks exactly like an answer to your prayers. The envelope appeared on the sidewalk at the exact moment Maya Brooks thought she had run out of options. The evening rain had just begun to fall over downtown Chicago, turning the streetlights into blurred streaks of gold across the wet pavement. Maya stepped out of Whitmore's steakhouse after a 12-hour shift, her feet aching inside worn black shoes, her shoulders heavy with exhaustion. She adjusted her thin jacket against the cold wind and checked her phone. No new messages. No miracle. No solution. Just the same hospital reminder she had read 3 times already that day. Payment due tomorrow. Her mother's treatment could not move forward without it. Maya closed her eyes for a second. Then she slipped the phone back into her pocket and started walking toward the train station. Half a block later, something caught her attention. A white envelope. Thick, clean, resting near the curb beside a black SUV that had just pulled away from the restaurant entrance. At first she assumed it was trash. Then she noticed the corner had split open. Cash. Her heartbeat stumbled. She looked around. Nobody seemed to notice. Cars moved through the rain. Pedestrians hurried past carrying umbrellas. The envelope remained exactly where it was. Waiting. Maya bent down and picked it up. The weight surprised her. Carefully, she opened the flap. Her breath caught instantly. Inside were stacks of $100 bills. Neat, crisp, more money than she had ever held in her life. She counted quickly. Once, then again.
$6,000.
The number felt unreal. 6,000. The exact amount the hospital needed before noon tomorrow. Not 5,000. Not 7. 6,000. Her fingers tightened around the envelope. For a moment, the city seemed to disappear. The rain softened. The traffic faded. There was only the envelope and the impossible coincidence resting in her hands. A voice behind her broke the silence. Looks like God answered somebody's prayer. Maya turned. A middle-aged man stood beneath a bus stop shelter watching her. He shrugged casually. Finders keepers. Then he boarded an arriving bus and disappeared into the night. Maya stared after him. Finders keepers. The words lingered longer than they should have. She looked back at the envelope.
$6,000.
Enough to save months of worry. Enough to keep her mother's treatment on schedule. Enough to change tomorrow. Maybe even change everything. Another gust of wind swept through the street. Maya looked toward the direction the SUV had gone. Then she noticed something she had missed before. Embossed on the envelope was a silver business card holder. The name engraved across the front caught the reflection of a passing headlight. Ethan Whitmore. Maya recognized it immediately. Everyone in the restaurant knew the name.
Billionaire investor.
Owner of Whitmore Capital. One of the richest men in Illinois. The same man who had finished dinner 20 minutes earlier before leaving with 2 executives and a security detail. Maya looked down at the money again. Then at the card. Then at the rain-covered street stretching ahead. Most people would have walked away. Most people would have convinced themselves it was fate. But Maya was already moving. Her shoes splashed through puddles as she broke into a run, clutching the envelope tightly against her chest. The billionaire's SUV had nearly vanished into the distance. The rain grew heavier. Her breath grew shorter. But she kept running anyway. Maya Brooks had never believed that life rewarded good people on schedule. If it did, her mother would not be lying in a hospital room waiting for a treatment that depended on money they did not have. The rain soaked through Maya's jacket as she ran down the sidewalk, but another memory kept replaying in her mind. Earlier that morning, she had been sitting beside her mother in St. Joseph Medical Center. The room smelled faintly of disinfectant and coffee. Machines hummed quietly in the background. Her mother, Denise Brooks, rested against a stack of pillows, her smile as warm as ever despite the exhaustion in her eyes. "You need to stop worrying so much," Denise had said softly. Maya laughed without humor. That would be easier if the hospital stopped sending reminders every 4 hours. Denise reached for her hand. Her fingers felt thinner than they used to. "We always find a way." Maya wanted to believe that. She truly did. But belief had become expensive. Rent was overdue. Her savings account contained less than $300. She was picking up every extra shift the restaurant could offer. Yet somehow the finish line kept moving farther away. Then the nurse had entered with paperwork. Professional, kind, uncomfortable, the kind of expression people wore when delivering news they wished someone else could deliver. Payment was required before treatment could begin.
$6,000.
Due tomorrow. Maya remembered staring at the number. 6,000. The same amount now resting inside the envelope pressed against her chest. The coincidence felt almost cruel. As she ran through the rain, another voice echoed in her memory. Her mother's voice. Calm, certain. The voice that had guided her through every difficult season of life. Character is what you do when nobody can see you, baby. Denise had repeated that lesson since Maya was a child. When Maya found a lost wallet in middle school. When she returned extra change a cashier accidentally gave her. When she worked her first job at 16. The lesson never changed. Character first. Everything else second. At the time, it sounded simple. Tonight, it felt impossible. A passing taxi sprayed water across the curb. Maya barely noticed. Her breathing grew heavier. The envelope remained secure beneath her arm.
$6,000.
Enough to erase months of fear. Enough to buy time. Enough to let her sleep for the first time in weeks without calculating bills in her head. Nobody would know. The thought slipped into her mind uninvited. Nobody had seen her pick it up. The owner was a billionaire. The money probably meant less to him than a dinner receipt. Nobody would know. Maya slowed for a moment. Then she stopped completely beneath the glow of a traffic light. Rain dripped from her hair. Water rolled down her face. The city buzzed around her. For a few seconds she stood perfectly still. Temptation rarely arrives looking like temptation. Sometimes it arrives looking like relief. Sometimes it looks like an answer. Maya looked down at the envelope. Then she thought about her mother sitting alone in that hospital room. She thought about every sacrifice Denise had made. Every double shift. Every missed meal. Every promise. Slowly, Maya tightened her grip and lifted her eyes toward the street ahead. "You raised me better than that," she whispered. Then she started running again. Somewhere ahead, the black SUV was still moving through the rain, and Maya was determined to catch it. Several miles away, Ethan Whitmore sat in the back of the black SUV, watching the city lights slide across the rain-speckled window. Most people who met him assumed his success came from intelligence. Some thought it came from timing. Others believed it came from luck. Very few understood the truth. Ethan trusted numbers because numbers did not lie. People did. At least that was what he had spent the last 10 years convincing himself. His phone rested in his hand. A message glowed on the screen. "Everything is set." He read it once before locking the device. Across from him sat his chief operations officer, Daniel Mercer, who had worked beside Ethan for nearly a decade. Daniel glanced toward the envelope-sized space on the leather seat beside them and shook his head. "You really think this is necessary?" Ethan did not answer immediately. Outside, rain tapped softly against the glass. Finally he spoke. "You saw what happened with Franklin." Daniel sighed. Everyone had seen what happened with Franklin. 2 years earlier, Ethan had trusted a senior executive like family. The man had spent years earning confidence, praise, promotions, and access. Then one morning he disappeared, leaving behind financial damage that took months to untangle and an even larger wound that never fully healed. Since then, something inside Ethan had changed. He no longer trusted first impressions. He no longer trusted promises. Most of all, he no longer trusted appearances. "One bad experience does not mean everyone is dishonest," Daniel said quietly. Ethan gave a short laugh. It was not one experience. His voice carried no anger, only fatigue. It was dozens. The SUV slowed at a red light. Ethan watched people crossing the street beneath umbrellas. Some hurried. Some smiled. Some stared at their phones. Strangers. Every one of them carrying stories he would never know. People reveal themselves when money is involved. Ethan continued. That is when the mask comes off. Daniel looked away. He had heard this argument before, many times. Or maybe money reveals what people are afraid of losing. Ethan did not respond. The light turned green. The vehicle moved forward again. Several blocks behind them, Maya was still running. Neither man knew that yet. Neither knew that soaked shoes were striking pavement with determination that refused to surrender. Neither knew that a waitress carrying $6,000 was chasing a billionaire through a storm. Ethan adjusted his watch and glanced toward the driver. How much farther? About 5 minutes, sir. Ethan nodded. Everything had gone according to plan so far. The envelope had been placed. The cameras had recorded it. The security team monitoring remotely would review the outcome later. By morning, Ethan expected another confirmation of what he already believed. That everyone had a price. Some prices were simply higher than others. Yet for reasons he could not explain, an uneasy feeling lingered beneath his confidence. Daniel noticed it. What if someone surprises you? Ethan looked out the window again. Nobody ever does. At that exact moment, 2 blocks behind them, Maya spotted the SUV waiting at another traffic signal. Her eyes widened. Relief surged through her exhaustion. She pushed herself harder. Rain streamed from her hair. Her lungs burned. Cars passed between them. The distance remained frustratingly large. But for the first time since finding the envelope, she could actually see the vehicle. The black SUV sat beneath the glow of a street lamp. Close enough to reach. Close enough to change everything. The traffic light seemed determined to test her patience. Maya pushed through the rain as fast as her legs would carry her, weaving past clusters of pedestrians and puddles that reflected the city skyline like shattered glass. The black SUV remained ahead, motionless for a few precious seconds. Close enough to see. Close enough to lose. She raised her arm and shouted, but the sound vanished beneath the noise of passing traffic. Her chest tightened, not from fear, from urgency. The envelope felt heavier with every step.
$6,000.
Not because of what it could buy, but because of what it represented. Someone had lost it. Someone was probably searching for it right now. The light finally changed. The SUV began moving forward. Maya's heart sank. Then something unexpected happened. Another vehicle pulled into the intersection, forcing the SUV to slow again. It was not much, a few seconds at most. But sometimes a few seconds are all life gives you. Maya ran harder. Her shoes splashed through standing water. Her muscles protested. Her lungs burned. Yet she kept moving. 50 feet. 40. 30. She could now make out the license plate. 20 feet. The driver glanced into a side mirror. 10 feet. Suddenly the SUV eased toward the curb. Maya almost laughed in relief. She reached the vehicle just as the rear passenger door opened. A tall man stepped out beneath a large umbrella held by a security assistant. Ethan Whitmore. For a brief moment, neither of them spoke. Rain fell steadily around them. Water dripped from Maya's hair and jacket. Ethan looked composed, dry, and entirely unaware of the journey she had just made. His attention shifted toward the soaked envelope clutched in her hand. Maya took a breath. Mr. Whitmore? Ethan turned fully toward her. His expression showed mild surprise. He seemed to recognize her from the restaurant. One of the waitresses. Nothing more. Yes. Maya held out the envelope. I think this belongs to you. Ethan's eyes moved from her face to the envelope, then back again. A strange silence followed. The kind that stretches longer than it should. You chased my car for this? He asked. Maya nodded. It fell near the curb after you left. Ethan accepted the envelope slowly. His gaze lingered on her rain-soaked appearance. The wet shoes, the trembling hands, the exhaustion she could no longer hide. You ran all this way? Maya gave a small shrug. I figured you would want it back. Ethan opened the envelope. The cash remained, untouched, every bill exactly where it had been. His expression revealed nothing. Not approval, not surprise, not gratitude. If anything, he seemed thoughtful, almost analytical, like a man solving a problem. Maya found that odd. Most people would have thanked her immediately. Instead, Ethan simply studied her. Do you know how much money is in here? Maya nodded. Yes. And you still brought it back? The question felt stranger than the first one. Maya frowned slightly. Of course. Ethan looked away for a moment. Toward the rain. Toward the city. Toward thoughts only he could hear. Then he looked back at her. Something had changed in his eyes. Not much. Just enough to notice. Interesting, he said quietly. Maya did not understand the word. She had expected a thank you. Maybe a handshake. Instead, she had the sudden feeling that this conversation was only beginning. Rain continued to fall between them, soft and steady, washing the city in silver reflections. Maya stood catching her breath while Ethan held the envelope in one hand. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. It was not a warm smile, not a cruel one either. It was the expression of a man who had just confirmed a theory. Miss Brooks, he said calmly, do you know why that envelope was there? Maya blinked. Because you dropped it. Ethan shook his head.
No.
I left it there. The words landed heavier than the rain. Maya stared at him, unsure she had heard correctly. You left it. Intentionally. Ethan slipped the envelope into his coat pocket. It was never lost. The world seemed to pause around her. Cars moved through the intersection. Headlights drifted across wet pavement. Yet Maya could focus only on the man standing in front of her. I do not understand. Ethan nodded as if he expected that answer. It was a test. Maya felt her stomach tighten. A test. Yes. His voice remained calm and measured. I wanted to see what someone would do when they found money that did not belong to them. Maya stared at him in disbelief. For a moment she wondered whether he was joking. His expression suggested otherwise. You mean all of this was planned? Ethan glanced toward the SUV where Daniel sat watching quietly through the window. The envelope, the cameras, everything. Maya looked away. A strange mixture of emotions moved through her chest. Relief, confusion, frustration. She thought about the miles she had run, the rain, the exhaustion, the desperate temptation she had fought every step of the way. And suddenly the entire night felt different. Why? She asked. Ethan answered immediately. Because people reveal who they really are when nobody is watching. Maya let out a slow breath. And what exactly was I supposed to reveal? Ethan studied her carefully. That depends on what choice you made. You already know what choice I made. Yes. For the first time, genuine admiration appeared in his eyes. Most people would not have returned it. Maya folded her arms against the cold. You seem very sure of that. Ethan gave a slight shrug. Experience. The answer bothered her more than she expected. She looked at the billionaire standing beneath the umbrella, protected from the storm while discussing human nature as if it were a business report. So what happens now? She asked. Ethan reached inside his jacket and removed a checkbook. With practiced movements, he began writing. Now I reward honesty. Maya watched the pen move across the paper. A few moments later, he tore out the check and handed it toward her. The amount made her eyes widen. $100,000. More money than she had ever imagined holding. Rain tapped softly against the paper. Ethan smiled again. Congratulations, Miss Brooks. You passed. But instead of reaching for the check, Maya simply looked at it. Then she looked at him, and something unexpected appeared in her expression. Not excitement, not gratitude, disappointment. Ethan noticed immediately. The smile slowly faded from his face. The check remained suspended between them as rain drifted through the glow of the streetlights. Ethan waited for the reaction he had seen countless times before.
Surprise.
Gratitude, excitement. Instead, Maya simply looked at the number and then back at him. No, she said quietly. Ethan blinked. For a moment he thought he had misunderstood. No. Maya shook her head. I cannot take that. The answer caught him off guard. People refused invitations. They refused advice. They rarely refused $100,000. Why not? Ethan asked. Maya glanced at the check again. Because that is not why I returned the envelope. Ethan lowered his hand slightly. It is a reward. Then you misunderstood what happened tonight. The words were not rude. They were calm, honest. Somehow that made them harder to dismiss. Rain tapped softly against the umbrella above him. Maya stood in the storm without moving. You think I made a business decision, she continued. I did not. I made a moral one. Ethan studied her face. There was no performance. No attempt to negotiate for more.
No hidden angle.
She genuinely meant it. Everyone has a price, Ethan said. Maya almost smiled. That belief must get lonely. The sentence landed with unexpected force. Daniel, still watching from the SUV, sat forward slightly. Ethan looked away for a moment, then back again. You do not understand how the world works. Maya laughed softly, not mockingly, sadly. Maybe not your world. The rain grew heavier. Water rolled down her sleeves. Yet she remained standing there as if the weather no longer mattered. Do you know what is strange? She asked. Ethan remained silent. The entire time I was chasing your car, I was not thinking about honesty. That surprised him. You were not.
No.
Maya looked toward the city skyline glowing in the distance. I was thinking about my mother. Ethan waited. She is in the hospital right now. Her voice remained steady. The treatment she needs costs $6,000. Due tomorrow morning. For the first time all evening, Ethan felt genuine surprise. Maya continued. The exact amount inside that envelope. Silence followed. Even the city seemed quieter. Ethan stared at her. The coincidence was almost impossible. Maya gave a small shrug. So trust me. I noticed the number. Ethan's grip tightened around the check. And you still returned it. Of course. Even knowing what your family needs? Maya nodded. Need does not change ownership. Ethan found himself unable to answer. The certainty in her voice carried a kind of strength he rarely encountered. Not power. Not influence. Something deeper. Character. The very thing he believed he had been measuring all along. Yet standing there now, he suddenly wondered whether he had misunderstood it completely. Maya looked at the check one final time. Keep it, Mr. Whitmore. Then she took a step backward. Because if I take that money tonight, this stops being about doing the right thing and starts being about getting paid for it. For the first time in years, Ethan Whitmore found himself standing speechless in the rain. For several seconds, neither of them moved. The rain continued its steady rhythm against the pavement, while Ethan stood holding a check that suddenly felt meaningless. Maya had already begun turning away when his voice stopped her. Wait! She paused. Ethan lowered the check completely. You said your mother needs treatment. Maya nodded cautiously. Yes. And you were willing to walk away from $100,000. I was willing to walk away from a reward for something that should not require one. Ethan stared at her. The conviction in her answer unsettled him more than any argument could have. Most people tried to impress him. Others tried to persuade him. Maya simply told the truth and seemed completely unconcerned with whether he agreed. Daniel finally stepped out of the SUV and approached them. He looked at Maya with open curiosity. Do you know how many people would take that check? Maya smiled faintly. Probably most. Daniel nodded. Including me. That earned the first genuine laugh of the evening. Even Ethan found himself smiling. The tension softened for a moment. Then Maya noticed something. A small camera mounted inside the SUV near the rear window. Her eyes narrowed. She looked from the camera to Ethan, then to Daniel. How many times have you done this? She asked. Neither man answered immediately. That was answer enough. Maya folded her arms. More than once. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Ethan finally nodded. A few. A few. Maya repeated. Or dozens. Ethan remained silent. The silence confirmed everything. Maya looked away toward the city lights. Suddenly the entire situation felt different. Not personal. Systematic. Planned. Repeated. What happened to the people who failed? She asked quietly. Ethan hesitated. Some lost opportunities. Because they picked up money they thought was abandoned? Maya asked. Because they revealed their character. Ethan's answer came automatically. It was the explanation he had given himself for years. Yet the moment the words left his mouth, they sounded weaker than before. Maya looked directly into his eyes. Or maybe they revealed desperation. Ethan said nothing. Maybe they revealed fear. Still nothing. Maybe they revealed medical bills. Rent, debt, sick parents, children at home. The rain seemed louder now. Daniel lowered his gaze. Maya took another step closer. Not aggressively. Not emotionally. Calmly. You call it a test because you already know the answers you want. Ethan felt something shift inside him. A crack in a belief he had carried for years. Maya continued. You leave money behind and wait for people to disappoint you. Her voice remained soft, almost gentle. Somehow that made every word hit harder. And when they do, you feel justified. Ethan opened his mouth to respond. No words came. Maya shook her head slowly. That is not trust, Mr. Whitmore. The billionaire who negotiated billion-dollar deals. The man who could command boardrooms with a glance. The man who always had an answer. Stood silent in the rain. Because for the first time all night, he was no longer testing someone else. He was being forced to examine himself. The words lingered between them long after Maya stopped speaking. Ethan stood motionless beneath the umbrella while rain drifted through the yellow glow of the streetlights. For years he had believed he understood people. He had built entire companies around reading motives, predicting decisions, measuring risk. Yet somehow a waitress standing in soaked shoes had dismantled an assumption he had carried for nearly a decade. Daniel remained silent. There was nothing to add. Maya glanced at the time on her phone. The screen reminded her of reality. Hospital bills, early shifts, responsibilities waiting for her tomorrow morning. She slipped the phone back into her pocket. I should go, she said softly. Ethan nodded, though his thoughts were somewhere far away. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of walking toward the SUV, he stepped away from it. Away from the protection of the umbrella. Rain immediately darkened his coat. Daniel looked surprised. So did Maya. Ethan barely seemed to notice. My brother used to say something similar. Maya looked at him. It was the first personal thing he had shared all evening. Ethan stared at the wet pavement. Before he died, he always told me that trust was a gift you offered, not a reward people earned. His voice carried a weight that had not been there before. I thought he was naive. Maya listened quietly. Then I spent years proving he was wrong. Ethan gave a short laugh. The sound held no amusement, only regret. The problem is that eventually you get so good at looking for the worst in people that you stop noticing the best. The city hummed around them. A distant train passed somewhere beyond the buildings. Water trickled along the curb. Maya noticed the difference in his voice. The confidence was still there. The certainty was not. Ethan looked toward her. Really looked. Not as a waitress. Not as a subject in an experiment. Not as a result. As a person. Do you know what bothers me most? Maya shook her head. Ethan smiled faintly. I spent thousands of dollars designing a test. His eyes moved toward the envelope inside his coat. And you taught me the lesson for free. For the first time that night, Maya smiled. A real smile. Small. Genuine. Ethan shook his head. You had every reason to keep that money. Maybe, Maya replied. But reasons are not the same as excuses. Daniel quietly looked away. Even after all his years working beside Ethan, he knew he was witnessing something unusual. Not a business negotiation. Not a transaction. A transformation. Ethan glanced toward the SUV again. Then back at Maya. The old version of himself would have ended the conversation there. The old version would have climbed into the vehicle and moved on. Instead, he found himself asking a question he had never asked before. Not as a billionaire. Not as a CEO. Simply as a man. Trying to understand. Tell me about your mother. And for the first time all evening, Ethan Whitmore stopped trying to evaluate character and started trying to understand it. The rain had softened by the time Maya finished telling him about her mother. Not every detail, just enough. Enough for him to understand the years of extra shifts, the sacrifices, the hospital visits, and the quiet determination that carried her through each day. Ethan listened without interrupting. When she finally stopped speaking, neither of them seemed in a hurry to leave. The city continued moving around them, but something important had already changed. Not in Maya, in him. The next morning, Maya arrived at St. Joseph Medical Center expecting another difficult conversation about deadlines and payments. Instead, she found confusion at the front desk. The balance had been cleared. Every dollar. She immediately asked who had paid it. The administrator smiled politely. An anonymous donor. Maya knew the answer before she heard it. She sat beside her mother and stared through the hospital window at the morning sunlight spilling across the parking lot. For the first time in months, she felt her shoulders relax. Across the city, Ethan sat alone in his office looking at a stack of reports from previous tests. Names, dates, outcomes, judgments. He closed the folder and pushed it aside. Then he called Daniel. "Cancel the program," he said. Daniel smiled before Ethan even finished the sentence. "I was hoping you would say that." But the story did not end there. Over the following months, something unexpected grew from that rainy night. Not a business partnership. Not a publicity campaign. Something quieter. Ethan established a scholarship fund for working adults caring for sick family members while trying to continue their education. Hundreds of applications arrived. Then thousands. The first scholarship carried a simple dedication. In honor of people who do the right thing when nobody is watching. Maya never asked for her name to be included. She never asked for recognition. In fact, most recipients never knew she existed. That was exactly how she preferred it. 1 year later, Ethan visited the restaurant where Maya still worked a few shifts each week. Success had not changed her. She still greeted customers with the same warmth. Still carried herself with the same quiet dignity. As he prepared to leave, Ethan paused beside her table. "You know," he said, "I thought I left $6,000 on a sidewalk to test someone else." Maya smiled. "And?" Ethan looked out the window for a moment before answering. "Turns out I was the one being tested." Maya laughed softly. Ethan joined her. Then he walked out into the afternoon sunlight carrying something far more valuable than certainty. Perspective. Because money can reveal character, but it cannot measure it. And sometimes the people who appear ordinary are the very ones who remind the world what integrity actually looks like.